All right, guys, we're live for another episode of Keeping It Real Masterminds. And today the subject is how to build a sustainable real estate business. And we got special guest Greg Harrelson. He's been a repeat, I don't want to say offender, a repeat contributor to the Keeping It Real. He's got a lot to share. He's Myrtle Beach real estate broker and also Charleston. And, you know, Greg comes on here and does these things for free because he's come from the same school I have, that you go mastermind, you share, you around, you know, other people that think big and just give back and you'll get back. So Greg is from Myrtle Beach. So if you guys have any real estate referrals, please send them to Greg Harrelson because he's coming in here and contributing big time. So for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Jeff Manson. I'm a Hawaii real estate broker, but also founder of Real Geeks. And my co-host is Frank Klesitz, and he's the CEO of Viral Marketing. And excuse me, his company helps real estate agents market to their database, so they helps them get more business from their database. So really good. Real quick, if this is the first time you're viewing the show, and you want to be notified, you can follow the Real Geeks Facebook page, the Real Geeks YouTube channel. You can go to keepingitreal.com. We have a special website that we slap up all the episodes, and you can, on the right side, there's an opt-in, just your name and email, and you'll get email notified of these, and also the Real Geeks Google+. I'm going to jump right in here. I'm really excited to have Greg back. I mean, he's a longtime customer, a friend, a mentor. I really look up to him. He's got a lot to share. Greg's team sold approximately 1,300 deals last year, and he contributed about 180 of those. But what's even more impressive is Greg actually coaches his team, and he's got a track record of coaching and helping agents do really, really high production. And he's got a brand new agent right now he's training, and the guy's only like 150 days in real estate. He's already taken 35 listings in the first 150 days. A lot of agents don't take that in a lifetime, okay? And then he's got 7 under contract and 3 closed already. And Greg, you know, let's jump in right now. I got a question. Okay. What kind of personality traits does this new top producer you're training, and what makes him special and be able to start producing from a top level right from get-go? I mean, can you share with us, you know, because not everybody you coach has this success right away or this quickly, right?
Yeah. I wish they did, but you know, it's not real. As a matter of fact, it's kind of unreal. You know, what I see, his name's Kevin Mills, by the way. So, right. You know, what I see in Kevin is he's probably one of the most he's extremely coachable. Yeah. So I mean, from a personality standpoint, he's probably more of an amiable personality. You know, he's kind of a very likable guy, very social. You know, he's very warm. So instantly he establishes rapport. But I think most important is that when I brought him in, and he's just a new licensee. When I brought him in, he basically says, "What do I do?" Okay, and then he'll go to the side, and you watch him for a couple hours, and he's doing it exactly like you told him, and he's not deviating one single bit. So he's very, very, very coachable. He's you tell him to jump, he says how high. He never asks why, that type of guy.
So he doesn't question anything?
Anything,
does he
nothing.
Question the why? Is he analytical at all? Or?
No.
Or he's just pretty like run for us and he runs?
Yes. Yeah. He's basically, what do I do? Okay. You know, and he's basically, you know, I've got some pretty good producers in my office, and so he's kind of brought in the attitude. Wait, I don't know anything. These guys know everything. So all I got to do is whatever they say. And so he has no ego. The ego's completely out of the picture.
So his ego's out of the way, and he's just a sponge. Like, hey, tell me what I need to do because I want to be successful. Does he come and ask a lot of questions? I mean, of what he should be doing. Not questioning what you're telling him, but right. Questioning and wanting to learn and grow. Does he have that trait?
Yeah, he's always asking questions. Like if he knows that he's getting ready to go, because I won't mention any names, but he's competed head-to-head with the top agents in our market, and he is beating them out of listings, okay? But what he's doing is he's coming to me, and he's saying, who am I, he's telling me who he's going up against, and he says, how would you sell against this person? how would you, what would your presentation be? So then I'm going to coach him on what he needs to do before he goes to that particular listing appointment. So he's out there, he's in my ear quite a bit asking me questions like that.
So he's not just executing, he's actually wanting to learn and grow and practice, and he's really working hard at building his craft.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg, awesome. One of the reasons people are here in the promo is this Hangout's really designed for someone who's starting from scratch. No contacts, no database, no money. Someone straight from the beginning, maybe someone that comes into your office and you have to train them and make them that successful in 6 months selling all those houses.
Sure.
I think you were talking before, the most important thing, I want to kind of really get into covering those topics for our audience today.
Yeah.
Is you mentioned the number one most important thing over all of this of building a sustainable business is consistent lead generation activities.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go in depth into what you mean by that and what you tell a new agent when they start right away? Like, okay, here's the real business. Here's what you have to do from scratch to build something sustainable. Step one.
Yeah, so step one is I think you got to, well, I guess step one should be learn the scripts, right? Whatever coaching program you're going to follow, I believe that every coaching program has good scripts as long as you actually use them. Okay, so, let's just say that assuming that we're past the, hey, I've already told you you've got to master scripts, because scripts is conversation. So when we say master the scripts, most people are like, oh, I don't want to do a script. What we're really saying, and we could exchange the word for, you got to master the conversation. And maybe that feels better. So assuming that you've mastered the conversation, well, you got to go out there and have, do lead gen. You've got to generate business. Because I always say you're either going to be a self-generator, you're going to either learn how to generate for yourself, or you're going to buy some service that's going to generate for you. So here's the key. If you want to have a sustainable business, the key is this. If somebody's generating for you, then that's not necessarily sustainable. What if one of these companies that's generating for you goes out of business? What if the laws change and that company cannot do those activities anymore? What if the price goes up and up and up and now you're priced out of that service? Those are not sustainable. Things can change. If you know how to self-generate, you always have that. That's something you always possess. So I say early on, you need to learn how to generate for yourself. Listen, if you're not going to generate for yourself, then the company that you work for, if they're generating for you, guess what? They own you. That's not sustainable. What if they get ticked off? They kick you out of the company. You just lost your source. You have got to be the source of your business if you want to build a sustainable business. Period. That's what I believe.
So Greg, can you go through if you're going to be a generator? What are the top 4 or 5 ways to generate business, self-generate? Can you?
Yeah. I would guess everyone would probably agree if we're talking about outbound phone calls, we'd probably talk about expireds, FSBOs, centers of influence. In the beginning. Most new agents, they come to me and they say, well, I don't have a database. I say, well, that's interesting. Do you have a cell phone? And they said, well, of course I have a cell phone. And I said, can I see it? Yeah. All right, well, where's your contacts? And then I start flipping through their contacts, and I say, well, what do you call this? Well, that's my address book. I said, no, that's your darn database. You have a database. Everyone has a database. It's just maybe it's not in a computer. It just might be in your iPhone. So that's your centers of influence. You can start there. But if you want to look at the most profitable when it comes to contact to appointment ratio, it's probably going to be expireds and withdrawals, old expireds, FSBOs. Past customers, well, in this case, you wouldn't have past customers yet. So those are the areas that I would start and I would master quickly.
Okay, and do you have any suggestions for them, because they may be newer agents watching and tuning in, how they would master those?
Yeah, so how you would master them. Yeah, let's call it script mastery. So, let's go ahead and get your script book, or whatever script book you want to use. We use Mike Ferry scripts. So, I'd take my Mike Ferry script book and I would read it, okay? I'd just read it. And then I would, after I've read it multiple times, then I'd read it into a recorder, and I'd burn, something on, so I could listen on my iPod, and then I would listen to that over and over every day, multiple times for an entire week. And then I would go back and take my script book, and I would re-record it once again, and then I'd repeat the process, and I'd listen to that recording a week. And I would do that for 4 consecutive weeks. And here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is this. The first time you record it, you're just going to be like reading it, right? Hi, this is Greg Harrelson. The second week, after you record it again, because you've listened to it so much, you're starting to kind of memorize it now by accident. Then when you read it the next time, you're going to sound a little bit different. And then the third time, you're going to sound a little bit different. But here's what's going to happen the third time. You're going to notice that you sound different, because when you listen to it the first time, you're going to be like, oh, that sounds terrible. This is canned. I don't really know if this is right for me. The second time, you're going to say, oh, that's not that bad. The third time, you're going to say, what? I'm actually getting pretty good. So once you say on the third time, wow, I'm actually pretty good, then you do the fourth time. Wait till you hear the fourth time. And so what you're doing is you're just totally immersing yourself into this conversation. I mean, how many of us know songs right now when we get into a car and a radio is on and we hear a song, we start singing it, we know the lyrics. Did you actually print off the lyrics and memorize those lyrics? Did you think about, I'm going to master this song? No. You actually learned the song because you were listening to it over and over again in your car. Just do that with your scripts and you'll know them in a month.
And I would also throw one other thing in there. I would also find some role play partners.
Absolutely.
If you can. There's plenty of groups out there, and find some role play partners and focus on the role playing and not a bunch of BS. Get in there, handle some objections, role play, and constructively criticize each other.
Yeah, Greg, we got a really great question from Brian Powers. He asked, what's a good script for reaching out to your sphere when you've neglected to stay in touch with them? So, okay, and I'm looking through my phone. What do I say now?
Yeah, you could just say, hey, Frank, I just wanted to give you a quick call, man. I owe you an apology. You mind if I take a couple minutes of your time?
Sure.
Yeah, you know, Frank, I've been terrible at being in communication with you, and you know, I was kind of looking through my notes, and I crossed your name, and I just want to just kind of chat with you. How you been, man?
I'm doing great.
Good. So there you're in. You know, wherever you want to go with it. But the key is if you're feeling like you've kind of failed to follow up with somebody, then call them and say, hey, look, I've been a jerk. I mean, Frank, if this was a real situation, you probably would not have turned around and said, you know what, Greg, you're right. You have been a jerk.
No,
You'd be like, oh, man. You'd be like, oh, man, don't worry about it, man. How you been?
And I'd probably ask, so what are you doing now these days?
Exactly. So we'd be right into it within seconds. We'd be past that. But what I believe is that you got to come clean. You know, acknowledge that you've dropped the ball. And then once you acknowledge it, then it's kind of like this. It's almost as if you make a promise and you break a promise, and then you feel like you're out of integrity. You're only out of integrity when you don't acknowledge that you broke a promise. It's not breaking a promise. It's not acknowledging what you did. And so if you want to gain your integrity back whenever you've done something wrong, acknowledge it, accept responsibility, communicate with the other person, and move on.
And let me add in there too, if you go about it like that, then it opens up the door for you to do better follow-up and more consistent, because you've basically acknowledged you hadn't been doing that. Gives you
it's a restart. It's a reboot. You're back in. It took a couple seconds. You're there.
I think a good idea. Daryl asks, and I don't want to go down the whole Facebook marketing side. He asks, does Facebook and Twitter marketing, what's the most effective approach? And the other contact database is your Facebook contacts and your friends. Do you have your agents go through that too to build their sphere?
No. Well, okay. So to build their sphere, yes. If it's their friends, and they really know them, then yes, that's obviously a way. If they don't have their contact information, that is another way to reach out with them. So through messaging them all and just saying, hey, I wanted to keep you up to date. Can you send me send me your email address and whatnot? I've lost your contact information. So that'd be another way to build your database. Absolutely.
Okay. But do you recommend any type of other Facebook marketing or Twitter for new agents?
No. And I'm not. And I'm going to disclose here that doesn't mean that I wouldn't recommend it. That's just not my thing.
Fair enough. Okay. So what after that?
There's plenty of people that coach that.
So they contact their sphere, they reach out.
But when it comes to sustainable business, on the because I've got some notes here, and if you see me looking this way, anyone looking right now, it's because I've got my notes on another screen, so I'm not distracted by anything for those that are watching. But what I have here under consistent lead gen, and I think this is probably really important, is in the beginning you need to, and people don't like this about their career. Okay, if somebody doesn't call you a robot, then you're probably not building a sustainable business. Now, what I mean by that is somebody needs to look at you from the minute you get to the office until about lunchtime and pretty much know, without seeing you, know what you're doing. If you should be there at 7:45 every morning, or 7:30 every morning, or 8 o'clock, whatever time, be consistent. Your starting time should always be the same starting time of every single day. And you should call, let's say if you're a prospector, then you start calling expireds at 8 o'clock every single day. And then at 9 o'clock you do this, and at 10 o'clock you do this. It's just completely robotic. There's a reason why manufacturing is moved towards robotics, is because of the efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to sustain and build a sustainable business, you've got to be robotic. You've got to be very efficient. So under the lead generating categories, however you're generating, even if it's not calling, you're doing some other forms, be very robotic about it. I was playing basketball earlier this afternoon and with a few of my newer agents today, and we started talking, and they knew that this was going to come on, and they say, so what are you going to say? And I'm going to say, well, one thing that I'm going to say, and I want every one of you to listen to, is I want you to be a robot. And I asked them, I says, where am I at 8 o'clock? They said, you're standing right there. Okay. They already know. They already see me as a robot. Same thing all the time. That's sustainable, in my opinion.
And it has to be repeatable, because repeatable is predictable, and predictable is sustainable.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, be a robot at things that are repeatable and predictable and duplicatable.
Okay. And then also you said build your database. And I know we've done a whole series on building a database and all that, but for the ones that are just newer and didn't maybe see that, building their database with their center of influence, past clients, stuff like that, do you have any quick suggestions of how to get that going and things that they must do?
Yeah. So, before I answer that, let's say this. Let me tell you why it's important for a new agent to start building their database. So in the beginning, most of your business is going to be from some outbound effort. You're going to either make an outbound call, you're going to send an outbound newsletter, maybe you're using viral, you're going to send a couple newsletters every month. That's outbound, right? It's you doing something. You're reaching out. Okay, that's what your business looks like in phase one, right in the beginning of your career. If you start building your database, after about a year or two, what's going to happen is your business is going to start to blend. You're going to have a blend of outbound business. You're creating business by outbound marketing. But because you have a database and you're nurturing it over time, you're going to start getting some inbound opportunities. So now you've got business coming from outbound and business coming from inbound. And then when you get to later on in your career, if you've built your database properly and you've built it big enough, you can do like I do. I'm not making any outbound phone calls. I will admit that. I do not make an outbound call. But I might be able to take 20 listings a month, all off of inbound calls. Why? Because I have a database. So there's three phases. It's outbound in the beginning, and then after a few years, you're hoping it'll be outbound and inbound. And then later on, when you start to say, hey, I'm going to look at really taking this to another level and try to work my way out of the business one day, then that, in the end, hopefully all of your business is completely inbound. But it requires you having a database. So there's the why you want to start now, because you're going to eventually want to go through those three phases, from a career standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I want to clarify this, because Greg said he's there at 8 a.m. every morning. He's making calls to returning calls at inbound, but you are calling those people about listings and making appointments and stuff of the people that came into you, correct?
Yeah, I typically spend about an hour a day calling people that have either called me or emailed me and said, hey, I'm thinking about selling. Can you help me out?
All right, good. And that's how you lead by example with your agent.
Yeah, well, if I wasn't making those calls, I'd still be standing there, because I am a robot. 8 o'clock, my robotic mind has to stand there. I mean, I'm a fish out of water if I'm not in that room.
Got it. And then they're coaching, helping agents.
And yeah, I might be coaching agents.
So let's go deeper into the database. You said before you got in these three things, you covered the why, but we left out the three things. Let's go into that more.
Well, the three things is outbound, inbound, and then inbound. But are you asking me, about how would you start building your database?
Yeah, let's go a little deeper on the database. I think people understand the calling, and you can go to the Mike Ferry website and get the scripts, and you got to do that. But along the way, you got to be asking for emails and building a database. What exactly is a database? How do you build it? What do you send to it? Let's cover that a little bit.
Okay, so let's just assume that we're making calls, and we're calling 20 people a day, and out of the 20 people, you're going to actually, 19 people are going to tell you, no, I'm not thinking of doing anything, and one person's going to tell you yes. That would be a great day, right? One appointment, but one yes and 19 no's. Well, the key is the database, if you'll communicate properly to the 19 people, there's more money to be made off the 19 no's than the one yes. But in order to monetize the no's, you have to get into communication and you say, hey, you know what, Jeff, I appreciate that, that you've taken the time to talk to me. I understand you're not going to be selling your property, but a lot of owners in the community actually, request that I keep them up to date as to what's going on, with the market, especially in your community. As we know, the slightest little shift in the economy can have a major impact on the prices of your property. What's the best email for you? I'll make sure you're getting the same updates. So then Jeff gives me an email. Now, out of the 19 no's, I might get 10 of them to give me an email address. Well, then if I put them in my database and then I send these 2 newsletters once a month, then over time, see, today I might be a stranger to them, but in 6 months, because of the value that I've delivered them through the content that I'm dripping on them, that I can convert that stranger into an acquaintance. And then in another 6 months or maybe a year, now we're 18 months into this drip campaign. Now all of a sudden they look at me as an advocate. So I can convert a stranger into an acquaintance and an acquaintance into an advocate by delivering value in the way I communicate to my database. But what's important is most people are looking at prospect and they're like, well, I got to get 19 no's to get to a yes. And I'm saying, yes, that's what you got to do, but you got to understand you'll make more money on the no's than you will on the yes, but you have to get their email addresses and their permission to give them, to be in communication with them.
All right, yeah, and you mentioned one thing, content. They're consuming their content. Can you talk real quickly about the quality of the content? It's not just the normal drip crap like, hey, it's freaking 4th of July, blah, blah, blah. It's bringing them valuable, or hey, the kids are back in school and I can hear the buses outside.
Set your clocks
Nobody
back.
cares about that crap, right?
No, man, don't do that. Don't do that. It's, you got to remember, this is an audience, and this is the one audience that controls us. I mean, if we're singing on a stage and they bought a ticket, they'll typically stick around for the entire event, even if they stop liking the music. But when it comes to us actually sending them an email, the second they sent something that they don't like, they delete, unsubscribe, spam you, whatever they want to do, they just get rid of you. They control the mute button, let's just put it that way. So an example, I tell you, I sent an email out to my database, a newsletter, the other day, and it blew us up. We got so much response. And the email was, and listen, we've all probably seen similar conversations, but it was an email to my seller database that said, hey, look, I get a lot of questions regarding, online property values. Are they accurate? And so I went into I wrote an article about, these are fantastic tools, but you don't want to make final business decisions based on these tools. And then I took a specific address. I left the street address, but I put the street, and I looked at Zestimate, Realtor.com, or Zestimate, I think Trulia, HomeSnap, Movado.com. There was, I think, 4 or 5 different online, estimation tools that I went to, and I took this one property, and the range on that exact property was around $110,000 as to what that property value was. And I said, now, as a seller, somebody's thinking about selling, what if you would have actually seen the one value that was the lowest? How would that have affected your decision? What if you've seen the highest? How do you know? So I was just sending an educational email that, hey, this is what the inconsistencies within the online valuation tools. There are great resources, just don't make your final decision based on that. And then of course I linked them to my Real Geeks valuation tool, and then every single one of them had to go to that tool to figure out what their property was worth, right? And so then, and because I did that through Infusionsoft, then I've got all these alerts of all these people that did that. So now we're going to call all these people just to, to see how things went, and see if there's anything we can do to help them. That would be an idea of how I would structure a newsletter to them.
And also, I know how you do your database because I'm friends with you, but can you explain a little bit how you segment your database so that way when you do want to do something educational like that just to sellers or to a specific building and stuff, how you're able to do that?
Yeah, so we're gonna I'm gonna segment them. I mean, I'm gonna segment them by, do they own a home? Do they own a condo? Are they on the ocean front? Are on the waterway? Are they on a lake? Are they on the golf course? Do they is it a rental property? Are they an absentee owner or are they a primary residence? And then the name of the community. So I'm going to tag. So in the event, later on, if I've got a buyer and they want a house on a golf course in this one area, then I can go to my database, put, residential home, golf course in these communities, and all of a sudden I can send an email to every single owner that has a property with that criteria and say, hey, I've got a buyer looking for this type of criteria. If you know anyone or if yourself is thinking about selling, please let me know. So you want to tag them properly right from the start because you never know what how you're going to want to pull out that database later on.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have other questions about the database or anything, Frank?
Well, no. I just, what you do, Greg, is you send 2 group educational emails to the entire list.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then you have very specific drip campaigns for new leads or very specific audiences. Let's just go a little deeper on that for databases, then we'll move on to something else.
Okay.
Why don't you explain that?
Explain what? I'm sorry.
Well, you have 2 blast educational messages to go to everybody. Then you have very specific drip campaigns for, like, say, a buyer lead.
That is correct. So let's just say that I send the newsletter. Let's call it a newsletter twice. I send 2 informative pieces of email a month to the entire database. But in those newsletters, I might have additional links that if they want additional information on this subject. Let's just say it's successfully negotiating a top price for a property that you own, or if they want an additional piece of information onto how to list their property and get it sold within 90 days based on aggressive marketing strategies. I'm kind of making these up. These are not real. So, but let's just say I sent Jeff gets that newsletter and he clicks on aggressive marketing strategies to get a property sold sooner than later. Then I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to make an assumption that there's a possibility that Jeff might be thinking of selling. So once he hits that one link, then he's going to then be tagged as a potential seller. And then the way I have my system programmed is everyone that's tagged as a potential seller will get another email. We'll kick off a certain campaign. So I might have 3 or 4 emails go out over the next, say, 2 weeks pertaining to selling property, and then have other links in those emails. And if they're clicking through some of those links or watching some of the videos, then I'm going to assume, wow, if this guy's consuming this much content on this subject, then I want to call this person. So after they would consume 3 or 4 different things, then an alert email would come to me saying, you need to call Jeff because he seems to be engaging quite a bit on things that talk about listing his property. Why don't you give him a call and see if you can help him out? So we're creating my call list based on his click patterns.
Which is lead identification.
That's what I call lead identification, right? We've talked about this, that because the viral, your system's just unbelievable, which I use, but the fact is your system, in my opinion, is not a converter. Your system is an identifier. You're able to tell me through what you've identified who are the most, where the highest probability of converting deals is, and then you give me that list, right, Frank? You give me a list and you say, hey, Greg, these 30 people, out of your entire database, these 30 are the ones that are most likely to do something. So instead of me trying to figure out how am I going to find the 30 out of the 3,000, you've identified them for me, and I just have to call the 30, and my conversion rate on the call to convert to an appointment is going to be through the roof.
Right, and you might even have in that seller sequence like, hey, try this tool to see what your value is if you sold it for a certain price, and if they go in and do that tool, that'll send you an email what they're even thinking of possibly selling for, right?
Oh yeah, I've got the valuation tool in the sequence. So so maybe email number 2 is say, hey, if you've put any thought to selling, or if you know anyone that is, I've got this great tool where you can kind of check to see what the values are. And then if they click into that and check to see their values, then I'm going to tag them as a valuation tool user, and then all of a sudden that's going to trigger a few different emails that's going to be coming in the following week.
Got it.
So so it's a dance. It's an if this then that. So if they do this, then I'll do that. So I'm not going to. Basically, it's content on demand, and it's based on their demands. It's not one size fits all email blast. That crap's got to stop.
It's based on user behavior.
It's based on user behavior. It's the blast. One conversation fits everybody. That's old news. It's not being read.
So let's move on from database. So we talked about the prospecting.
Yes.
We talked about building a database along the way and what to send there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe about administrative help for someone's new. Like, when do you delegate all the administrative work? Because if you talk doing administrative and sales, it's never really sustainable, is it?
No, but I do think there's other things that they need to be doing before that comes into play. But if you take Kevin Mills, who we kind of shared some information about how quickly he's built his listing inventory, I can assure you, it's pretty entertaining at my office because I can actually see him about ready to go in a massive breakdown. Right, new agent, no assistant. He's got like 30 something, maybe 40 listings, maybe total. Bunch of pendings, some things have closed. Heck, he doesn't even know what he's doing, right? And so now he's got agents calling him to set up, and they got to negotiate and ask him questions about HOA. He's going crazy. And so how is he going to process all this stuff? So the first thing is I love to watch them go through the chaos and the pain and experience the overwhelm, because until you experience the overwhelm, you're probably not going to be motivated enough to set your systems up properly. But what you want to do quickly, and for most newbies, financials is going to dictate how quickly you can get an assistant. But if you're experiencing that type of growth, or even anywhere close to that type of growth, you want to get somebody to help you, and you need to hire an assistant right before you need an assistant. You want to grow into your assistant. You do not want to play catch up with an assistant. You don't want to be trying to catch up, hire an assistant because you need to catch up. You want to get an assistant before you need that assistant, and then motivate yourself to grow into that to that assistant. And take all the goal is to have an 80-20 rule, and that is 80% of your time is going to be in doing some sort of generating activity, income generating activity. That could be negotiations also, not just prospecting, and 20% of servicing. But in the beginning, you're typically 20% generating, 80% servicing. That is not going to be sustainable. You're going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to go up and down. You're going to have days, months where you have a lot of business, and months when you have no. It's going to be a roller coaster ride.
What are other things agents need to know, Greg? You have your notes there.
Yeah, I would say that they need to have multiple pillars. So when a new agent comes in, I see that agents they'll maybe they'll call an expired, and they'll have a success, and they'll keep going to that well over and over and over. And one of the bad things is they'll have success and more success and more success, and then they'll think that they can build a sustainable business just off that one pillar, that one chain of lead flow. And I'm saying you've got to have multiple pillars. You need to be working expireds, FSBOs, cold calls, rent-bos, centers of influence, past customers, buyers. You need to work them all. So if one segment of our market goes down, because we know when the expireds dry up, the FSBOs increase. Expireds in FSBOs go like this. Expireds go down, FSBOs go up. Expireds go up, FSBOs goes down, because that's an indication of, the confidence that the consumer has as whether they can do it without us. So what if all you know is expireds, and your market gets hot, there's no more expireds, and you don't have a clue on how to do for sale by owners? Then you're going to have to take some time to then learn the for sale by owner scripts, learn how to do that type of business, and that period of time you're going to lose your momentum, and now you're going to be on a downward slope. So early on, don't get fixated on being one-dimensional. You got to be multi-dimensional and have multiple channels of lead flow coming in. That's very critical early on, because you'll get addicted to that one thing that works, and then you won't learn anything else. And what you're going to do is you're going to hit a ceiling, and then that well's going to dry up, and you're going to then lose all your momentum. So that's very important to me. I put on my notes. Multiple pillars. Don't just learn one thing. Be multi-dimensional.
We covered building an audience. We covered the 80-20 rule. I'm just looking at your notes.
And then systems.
Follow-up master.
Yeah. Follow-up. I think in the beginning, real estate agents, I don't think newer agents that are building their business understand that more income is lost because of poor lead follow-up than probably any other part of our transaction. It's poor lead follow-up. And the newer agent, a lot of times, they're afraid to follow up too much because they're afraid maybe they're going to bother the person. What they don't understand is that the follow-up, it really impresses upon that person that they're following up, that this person is on the go. This person's a go-getter. This person wants to earn my business. This person, if it's a seller, this person, if he follows up with a buyer to buy my house like he's following up with me to get my listing, then he's my agent. So you got to understand that there's a lot of income that's lost with follow-up. And believe me, no matter what you think, every lead that you have is actually also some other agent's lead. So you're competing. If you don't know you're competing, just assume you're competing. So you're really competing on how much you're going to follow up. You're probably not. The presentation's important, but the follow-up's much more important. So I would say that agents in the beginning, they've got to form that habit. I would rather you be accused of following up too much than not following up enough.
I would agree.
What's the typical day for like a new agent? You got a prospect, you got to lead follow-up, you got to do appointments, maybe you got to do some database content work weekly or monthly. Can you give me an idea of a schedule?
Yeah, I mean, they would get into the office at 7:45. I mean, this would be if I was to coach somebody, well, I'd coach them to be I'd coach them to get in the gym at 5:30 in the morning is what I'd really do, and then I would say you need to be in the office by 7:45. You need to be on the phones generating business from 8 to 11. At 11 to 11:30, you need to be returning calls because you probably got some messages that you need to return. Maybe answer a couple emails. Go to lunch at 11:30. Get back to the office between 12:30 and 1. If you got nothing to do, prospect. If you got an appointment, go on your appointment. If you don't have an appointment, prospect. That's it.
Very simple.
It. Okay.
Well, I mean, listen, simple is the most difficult thing we have to do in life. It's pretty simple to not put that bad food in your mouth, isn't it? But look at all of our stomachs. It's pretty simple not to drink that soda. But it's pretty difficult to put it down.
All right. And can you expand on that as far as the morning ritual part and how important that is to set up your day? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, it comes back to being robotic, right? Okay, so we've heard this. Different coaches have said this, and we're independent contractors. We're real estate professionals. Every day we wake up, we're unemployed. That's the deal. You wake up unemployed. That's not a choice. You wake up, no choice, you're unemployed. But whether you go to sleep unemployed or employed is a choice. So I believe that if you'll wake up and you'll generate every single day, that's your morning ritual, then you'll find someone to employ you every single day, or at least nearly every single day. So that ritual is what you do to make sure that when you go to bed at night, you found somebody to employ you. You either got a buyer to commit to working with you, you got a seller to commit to interviewing you for the possibility of taking their listing. And that's your job. So if you don't have a ritual, if you don't have consistency, and if you're not robotic in that nature, then there's going to be days that you come into the office, you open up your emails, and you start getting consumed with all these fires that you need to put out, and then all of a sudden you don't prospect. Well, that's going to be the day that you're going to go to sleep unemployed. Now ask yourself this. How many days can you go home to your spouse and say, honey, I was unemployed again today? How many days can you do that? So it's a habit. Prospecting is a habit and not prospecting is a habit, or generating is a habit and not generating is a habit. Either way, it's a habit. One pays and one doesn't.
I got another habit. I got something else written here too. I got outsource servicing, not generation, and that goes back. And I'm thinking back to our last hangout with Tom Nickley, and he'd been really buyer heavy, and then he was going to start doing listings and stuff like that. And you mentioned to him that you thought that he needs to master that process before he brings on just a listing agent. And not just outsource that right away, because it's really tempting for a newer agent to say, "Hey, I'm going to outsource the prospecting. I'm just going to go on the appointments or what have you." But what is the importance of not outsourcing that? Outsourcing the servicing part, which you shouldn't be spending any time in, anyways. But yeah, outsourcing that, but not outsourcing the generation. Yeah. Can you expound your reasoning behind that, or your thoughts or your beliefs in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me first say that one reason I suggest that Nickley master it is because I know he is going to crush it when he masters it. So he's a stud, right? So he's just getting ready to just crush this business. So I really would say that to him, because I know how much money he's going to make by doing it, and then I also know that by him leading his team by example, I know that he's going to get the people that he's outsourcing it to, they are going to perform at much higher level when they see somebody like him, a superstar person, actually they see him live doing it himself. So that's really why I said it to him, because I believe that he is just a rock star. Now, but I do also believe that as a philosophy. It's not just him, but as a philosophy, I feel like what's happening with our industry and is whether it's pay-per-click and Zillows and all these things out there. There's all these systems where you can get into this business, pay money, and never have to learn the art of lead gen. You don't have to learn how to generate on your own in our industry anymore. But I will tell you this, that history will show, and even today, the agents that are at the tip top that are using these systems also generate themselves. The ones that do not generate are held hostage by those companies that generate for them. And that's very important. And is like, what if, and listen, Zillow's not going away, but what if somebody like a Zillow went away? Think of how many agents that their sole income is based on an ROI off of Zillow leads. What if Zillow collapsed today? What would they do? Well, they would jump to another one. What if that stopped? So I just believe that if you're going to build a sustainable business, you have to know how to do it yourself. And that'll go to any business. I mean, I don't care what if you're building signs, you're a sign company, you need to know something about building signs before you start building a company that builds signs. Because if you don't, here's what you're going to risk. You're going to risk all those people that you convinced to do it for you. They're going to leave you at some point, and when they leave you, it's going to be very painful. They won't leave you if they know that you know how to do it yourself, but if they discover at some point that you don't even know how to do what you've convinced them to do that makes you all the money, they're gone. And they're going to figure it out. So you need to be able to walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. So I do believe in outsourcing, 100%. I just believe that you need to learn the art yourself also.
Right. And I also wrote down here when you were saying that if you can get all these leads and they're just leads, you still have, if you get all these leads and you don't know how to generate, it's going to be harder for you to follow up and generate more business from those leads. Because in the first place, you don't know how to generate anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, it all comes down to, we all have the same leads. So you're going to have to master the conversation either way. I mean, if somebody's giving you the leads, you've got to know the conversation. You still got to convert them. You've still got to be able to communicate that the value you're going to deliver to them, either in the transaction or the experience of the transaction, is of much higher value than any other agent that you're competing with. You've got to demonstrate value, and you're going to do that through conversations.
All right, good. And okay, we got about 15 minutes. I want to hit on one last thing that I think is really, really important in building a sustainable business, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A.
Yeah, we have lots of questions.
Yeah, okay. So let me just...
I'm on your time. You tell me wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, and if we have to go a little bit late, I'm okay. I have down here, always be learning and growing. So what is the importance of that? And I know you're a big advocate of that, but I want you to share with the audience why that's so important in building a sustainable real estate business.
Well, okay, so a lot of people, as we've discussed, I think we had a conversation about this a little earlier, as a lot of people say, well, I really don't have time to go to that seminar. I don't really have time to join that mastermind group, right? Listen, you don't have time not to. That is, you have to get information. You have to learn. The industry changes so fast, and and where you're going to stay current and keep current, you're going to keep current in these learning opportunities. Whether it's mastermind groups, it's mindstorming together and sharing information. Whether it's a seminar, a convention. If it's a hangout, a Real Geeks hangout, or any of the other viral hangouts, you need to totally immerse yourself in information. You want to be a student, a lifetime student of this business. I mean, listen, my goal right now is to read 2 books a month. It's to listen to at least 1 or 2 hangouts a month. It's to go and travel to 1 seminar about every 45 days, sometime a mastermind or seminar this year. I've been in the business for 20 plus years, and I do a fairly good amount of business, and I feel I'm like fearful that if I don't continue to learn, somebody's going to pass me by, because the information is out there. It's readily available, and if you'll go get it, and you'll get it straight from the source, you bring it back to your market, you cut your learning curve down by years. You can learn something at 1 3-day mastermind or seminar that will change your business, and you may make money off that one technique for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. But
it's critical.
You're preaching to the choir now. Yeah,
you know what? I guess another way to look at it is this. If we're going to, if we're going to command authority, if we want people to look at us as true professionals, as authorities in the real estate field, then we got to do what authorities do. A lot of people, like it or not, doctors are looked at in the medical field. They're looked at as being an authority, but those doctors are constantly studying. They're reading what's the new way to operate on this heart, what's the new procedures, what are the new drugs. Those guys are studying all the time. So if we start to look at, and we look at professional athletes, I mean, they're studying playbooks. They're studying their plays. They're out there, maybe a form of studying for them is practicing. They're doing this hours and hours and hours every single week, and they're getting paid the big bucks. If we want to get paid the big bucks, let's just do what they're doing. Study the art of selling real estate.
All right, awesome. Thanks.
Great, Greg.
Hey, Frank, we got about, I don't know, it's about 1:49. Well, 1:40 my time. I'm in Hawaii. I'm 6 hours behind Greg, and I don't know, 3 hours behind you. Anyhow, how many? Can you start rattling off some questions?
We got a bunch of questions, and feel free to vote up the ones that you like, and I'll pick them here. Question: can you go through like a sample door knocking script for somebody? I mean, really, if they're door knocking, like just.
I'll say I don't coach door knocking. Okay, so let me just say that. So I can make something up. Hello, it's Greg Harrelson, Century 21, the Harrelson Group. Another property just sold right down the road, and one sells, two more sell right away. I was just kind of curious, when do you plan on selling? You know, that would be my script, but that's really a cold call script, a just sold script. That's a Mike Ferry, you know, script. So I'm not a proponent on door knocking.
It's the same thing. You got another one, Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. What are a few of your favorite books on real estate where someone can go to learn?
On real estate, I wouldn't say I have a lot of favorite real estate books, but listen, I think the best real estate book out there is Keller's The Millionaire Real Estate. I think that's pretty much the Bible for real estate books. I really do.
Okay. Do you have a personal coach, Greg? Who?
Mike Ferry.
Fair enough. You mentioned that you're always learning. How often do you try new lead generation techniques, and what percentage of those techniques fail?
How often do I try new techniques?
Yeah, lead generation techniques, whether it's phone or internet stuff or whatever, R&D.
I would say, if it's outbound, I probably don't try a lot of new outbound techniques. I think the old ones that have been around forever definitely work. So I might change a few words here and there depending on what's going on in the economy. But if we were talking about maybe more of non-outbound, so let's just take some of these lead generating systems, maybe I'll try, a certain lead generation system, maybe a property valuation tool. So usually what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm gonna check this out. I'm gonna mastermind with some people, try to figure out what the best practices are, and I typically will give something around 6 months before I determine whether or not it's going to work or not. And yes, I probably fail at executing on more of these systems than I succeed at. So I am constantly testing to figure out which ones are working and which ones are not. But I'll go to mastermind members and people that I respect, and also ask them if they've had any experiences with them too before I try them.
Any seminar or mastermind recommendations on top of the book you recommended?
I guess, I could tell you what I'm up to. I mean, I'll go to, a Mike Ferry event, obviously. I was just at InfusionCon with Jeff a couple weeks ago, so getting really into, marketing automation. Frank, you and I are going to Tony Robbins Business Mastery in August. I'm going to a John Maxwell event in San Francisco in November. Those are things that are hot on my list this year.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
You mentioned your database system. What is that system, and where does someone go about getting that system?
Yeah, I'm using Infusionsoft, and I've got a ton of articles on a website called realestatesalessolutions.com. Just go to realestatesalessolutions.com, and I would say before you go and jump into any system, go read a bunch of training articles that I've put on there, best practices, and there's some information on how you can get involved if that's interested. And then of course, I use you also, Jeff, for Viral.
No, you use Jeff for Real Geeks and Frank for Viral.
Frank for Viral. And I use Jeff for, Jeff for Real Geeks.
All right, another good question. When setting up your database, where do you suggest learning what content to send, and any suggestions on content when to send it out?
A lot of the articles that I have on that last website that I just mentioned is best practices for content. Because that is where I will say that is the art of your database marketing is going to be the content. Just a word to the wise: do not use cheesy sales language. Don't do it. Your job is to deliver value and let the law of reciprocity take place. Just deliver value, and they will recognize you as being a resource, and they'll come to you. If you do it any other way, your unsubscribes are going to you're going to have unsubscribes faster than you can actually put new people in your database.
Mm-hmm. And then for anyone who's interested, we send out 1 million emails through Viral on real estate emails. Every week we publish the top 5 open and click rates of what people are clicking on right now for real estate, and you can see the exact emails and the content and the headlines right up on our website, Get Viral.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
Yep. Where are you getting your expired and for sale by owner info and phone numbers to prospect to?
Yeah, so we use the RedX, the Land Voice. A lot of people know about those systems. But in addition, we actually still do a manual lookup too. So we're using multiple systems because all of them seem to get a few different ones, and manual is one of the things that we'll do. So we're using all of those systems, and those systems are also being used for the telephone numbers.
Okay, good. Do you send out videos? I guess you do for your recruiting because you use Viral for your recruiting video blog.
Yes.
Your newsletter is a little different because you're using those content for your agents because your agents are passing those newsletters along. Why don't you just talk about how you use video in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple things. So, I'm constantly, and I will send videos out. So sometimes in my newsletter, I will send, videos out on particular subjects. I might not do it every single time to certain databases. From a recruiting standpoint, where I'm using Viral, then obviously that's always, always video. And then I'm constantly posting, of course, putting it on YouTube, but I am posting that on Facebook. And what I'm doing is I don't look at these videos as being a generation tool. It's really just establishing a brand of like, okay, well, hopefully I'm creating a brand of, hey, this guy knows a little bit about real estate. I guess that's up for the audience to decide, but that's what my intention is while I'm posting videos. And so, I'll go and do videos with mortgage brokers, with home inspectors, and I'll ask them questions that I know buyers maybe are confused about. Maybe a buyer's confused on the oceanfront condos of what type of do they need renter's insurance? Most of them don't even know what renter's insurance is, but they do need it. So I'll get an insurance company. I'll do a video with the insurance company, and I'll put that on my website, and I'll put it everywhere I can, throughout the internet.
Okay. I got a good question. Going back to our promise to new agents here, what do you recommend a new agent call once they are relatively comfortable with scripts? Who seems to be the easiest conversation to get both now business as well as future business by adding to the database? Expireds, FSBOs, just listed, just solds.
Yeah. So the easiest business doesn't always give you the most immediate business. Okay. So the easiest conversation to have, the easiest call to make is going to be a just sold call because it's kind of non-threatening, right? The people they didn't just fail to sell. But so the cold call, like a just sold script, that's going to be your least conversion for getting an appointment immediately, but it'll also provide you the most entries into your database. So you'll build your database faster from cold calling, but it'll be business, it'll be future business. So expireds is going to be a little bit more difficult of a conversation because you got to remember this seller had just been promised 6 months ago that the agent they hired was #1 at everything, was aggressive marketer, was going to have their property sold, had plenty of buyers, and then they went for 6 months without talking to that agent, not having any showings, and never hearing from them again. So they're kind of ticked off. So in the beginning, when you're calling, they're going to say, oh, gosh, another real estate agent, right? So that's not necessarily the easiest conversation, but if you do master that conversation, it's going to have the highest conversion rate for number of contacts to appointments and listings taken. And FSBOs would also fall, I would say FSBOs will fall in the middle. FSBOs will not be as confrontational as an expired, but they also are not going to convert as fast as an expired, but they'll convert a lot faster than cold calling.
Would you consider leads you get from your website as a part of your database?
Absolutely, yeah. So that would be my buyer database.
What was the name of the book you mentioned that contained these scripts that someone can get?
The book that are we talking? I guess we're talking about. I use the Mike Ferry scripts, so you could easily go to MikeFerry.com, and he has all his scripts on that website, and you could download a copy of the scripts. And I've altered them very little, believe it or not.
Okay. And then a question about Viral. Are your newsletter and drip campaigns from Viral Marketing? So why don't you explain how through Viral we do your recruiting videos and Hangouts and how that all works?
Yeah. So I'm using Viral for my newsletters that I'm sending out to real estate agents in my market that I'm attempting to recruit, as well as that is also going out to real estate agents who I've been in contact with over the years all over the country. And what the content is more of an educational content. It's me giving some tips about building a real estate business, maybe tips on expires and whatnot. So not only am I sending it to the market in hopes to generate recruiting opportunities, but I'm also sending it to out of my market to my real estate agent databases because I'm getting a tremendous amount of inbound referrals. So I'm kind of giving, almost education out to this huge database of realtors, and in return, they know that anytime they have somebody for Charleston or Myrtle Beach, they're sending me referrals. So I'm generating a ton of referrals because I'm contributing to hopefully to the betterment of their business. They're reciprocating by giving me referrals. That's how I'm using viral, and it's extremely effective.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Let's get two more here. We've got two more good ones. What's the best way to follow up from people that responded to a home valuation ad that say you're running online or whatever, and they've given you, all they've given you is their address with no email or phone?
Yeah. So what I would do, and we get that all the time. So I would take that address and I'd go look it up on first. Let's just say I don't have their name, so I'd take their address. I'd go to the property that they own. I'd go to my tax records, and then I would find their name, and then I would then go to White Pages or any other services that you use to look up telephone numbers. I'd look up their telephone number and I'd call them.
Fair
and
enough.
there's probably a follow-up question in that person's mind. Well, what would you say? Well, I would say, hey, Frank, it's Greg Harrelson down in Myrtle Beach with Century 21. Just wanted to touch base with you. I've got a valuation tool that I kind of have hanging out there. I'm not sure if you got a chance to use it, but I just wanted to give you a call and see if there's anything I can help you with down here in Myrtle Beach. That could be a simple script you could use.
Good. And one last one. How are you competing or deterring buyers that mention Redfin that offers a rebate when you purchase a home through them? I have ran into this issue recently.
Yeah, so I'm going to knock on wood. I'm not dealing with Redfin, but I do in my market because they're not in my market. But I'm fairly aware of what they do. I guess basically what I would do is I'd say, well, here's the question that I have. What type of quality, what level of agent, or as from a quality standpoint, at what level of quality do you think you're going to get out of an agent who's willing to discount their money? So if they're willing to discount their commission, they're probably really willing to sacrifice, the advice that they're going to give you on the property that you should purchase. In other words, they're not really making that much money, so they probably don't really care if you get the best deal in town or if you don't get the best deal in town. So I understand that the $1,500 you're getting is very attractive, but the challenge is you might end up paying $10,000 more than you should on a piece of property. And if you're getting a mortgage and you're paying interest, just think about the accrued interest over the next 10 years on that $10,000. That might be another $7,000. So, sometimes saving 15 can cost you 17,000. And you're just going to have to decide, do you want to work with a professional agent that's going to be dedicated to finding you quality properties at a discount, or are you just wanting to get a $1,500 rebate check? Be careful.
That's
so
great.
again, I just made up that all right now because I've never had to use the script, but I would say hopefully that'll help you and you can work with that, but I would probably go in that direction somehow.
Yeah, and I would also add, sell value on what you're going to do to help them too, and let them know that you only deal with a certain amount of people, and that you have space to work with them. So create some value that, you only work with so many people because you're going to give them 100% of your focus, and you can only work with so many people, and you got room to help them. So sell some value as well, I would say, too.
Cool.
Right.
Let's wrap it up, Jeff.
All right. I want to thank Greg Harrelson again for coming in here. We're so lucky to have him. And actually, before this hangout, we were talking, and I asked him, so we're going to figure it out. We're going to do another one with Greg because we love Greg, and he brings a lot of value. Like we're bringing a lot of valuable content because Greg is our guest. So it's not cheesy stuff like those drip campaigns agents sometimes want to send out. Anyway, just keeping it real. So we're going to do that on June or July. Come on, it's the end of the show. I can be a little giddy and have fun. Sure. All right, so we're going to do it in June or July, and it's going to be on follow-up. We're going to really dig deep on follow-up, and because like Greg said earlier, it's won or lost in the follow-up. You can generate or you can get these online leads or home valuation leads or even a FSBO. You can go contact a FSBO once or twice, but if you don't keep following up and persistent, you're not going to win. So to win, you got to really have a good follow-up strategy, and also we're going to dig deeper on some other strategies how to get them to respond back to you. So we're going to hit on texting and other emails and stuff like that. So we're going to do that sometime in June or July, so I'm really thrilled to have him back. Next episode is April 30th, and we're going to have Matt Templeton. He's I'm sorry, I'm rocking in my chair. I normally don't sit down. So Matt Templeton, he's a real estate agent from Albuquerque. He's 25 years old. He did like 75 or 78 transactions last year. And he's got a goal to do something like 175. He's definitely going to double his business, but he's only 25 years old. And so I'm really excited to have a young rising star on the show April 30th. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for your help, Frank. Couldn't do these without you, and we'll see you next show. Thanks. Aloha.